Let them know it's FeFe the Vibe. Follow me on Snapchat at FeFe the Vibe.
Okay. Period. You see me.
On August 25th, 2024, Felita FeFe Jovan Bailey, age 25, attended a birthday celebration in Amarillo, Texas. She visited bars on Polk Street with relatives and friends before going to a house party on Avondale Street. At approximately 3 a.m., gunfire occurred. 2 individuals were shot. 1 survived. Felita Bailey was pronounced dead at the hospital. Police investigated multiple witnesses who gave conflicting statements. Dylan Black was arrested and charged of murder, but the charges were later dismissed. Merron Bailey was later identified as a suspect. He was located by U.S. Marshals in Houston and indicted by a Potter County grand jury for murder. His case is pending trial. Felita Bailey's family has held vigils and public demonstrations demanding accountability. The case remains unresolved as legal proceedings continue.
Hey, this is Kip Billups. I'm at 3rd and Taylor in front of the police station with Merron Bailey. And can you spell your last name?
B-A-I-L-E-Y.
Okay, and why are y'all here today?
We're here having a rally for my niece. She has been in a senseless murder, and we're trying to get justice for my niece.
Okay, what happened exactly? Was it 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, on the 31st of August, she was killed.
What's her name?
A party she was invited to. Felita Bailey.
Okay.
Was invited to a party, and there was an altercation there, and she ended up being killed, and there was a person charged, and then they let him go, so we're getting justice for my niece.
Understood. And so far they haven't brought any other charges?
We haven't had anything else. No,
and
sir.
So they dropped the charges against that person and let him go?
Yes, sir.
And
so we're needing justice.
Okay, so what exactly do you want the police to do?
To bring justice for my niece.
Fair enough.
Give peace to the family so we can actually...
Okay, I remember hearing about this on the news, which was such a tragedy. And I appreciate your time.
Okay.
And have a good day. God bless and good luck.
Thank you.
Stay with us as we unravel the shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Felita Jovan Bailey, known to many as FeFe, was born on October 26, 1998, in Amarillo, Texas. She was the daughter of Odessa Bailey and Leon Hayes. Her childhood began in Amarillo, where she spent her early years before relocating to Dallas as a young girl. This move marked an important transition in her life, as she adjusted to a larger city environment while remaining connected to her roots in Amarillo. Growing up in a household centered on family ties, Felita's early experiences were shaped by the presence of both parents and extended relatives. Her upbringing in Amarillo exposed her to a smaller community lifestyle, while her later years in Dallas introduced her to a more urban environment. These two cities will remain significant throughout her life, as she maintained connections to both. Felita attended Mesquite High School, where she was part of the graduating class of 2017. While in high school, she formed long-lasting friendships and developed a reputation as someone full of energy and presence. After graduation, she pursued further studies at Eastfield College, where she began coursework toward becoming a dental hygienist. Her enrollment reflected her interest in the healthcare field and her commitment to securing a professional path for herself. In January 2024, Felita returned to Amarillo. Her decision to move back was partly influenced by her desire to spend more time with her grandmother and remain closer to family members. After relocating, she secured employment at Tyson Foods, where she worked on production line. Her role was steady and provided financial support as she planned the next steps toward completing her dental hygienist certification. This move back to Amarillo demonstrated her balancing of immediate employment needs with long-term career aspirations. Felita was widely recognized among her peers for her outgoing and uplifting personality. She was often referred to as a hype man, because of her ability to energize a group and bring attention to herself through her contagious laughter and presence. She enjoyed activities such as singing, dancing, and shopping. Felita also maintained an active social media presence, sharing aspects of her daily life with her wider circle of friends and followers. Beyond her public image, she was deeply family-oriented, spending considerable time with cousins and offering them support whenever needed. Felita's primary ambition was to complete her certification and begin a career as a dental hygienist. She saw this as a pathway to long-term stability and professional independence. Her goals extended beyond personal success, as she intended to create a foundation of stability for her family. Having roots in both Amarillo and Dallas, she often expressed a desire to maintain connections to both cities, bridging her life between them. Amarillo is a mid-sized city with a small-town environment and urban characteristics. Social life revolves around close-knit communities, but the city also has a nightlife scene centered around bars and entertainment districts. One notable area is Polk Street, where young adults often gather to drink, socialize, and celebrate on weekends. While these nightlife spaces offer opportunity for connection, they also present risks. After-hours gatherings, fueled by alcohol in large groups, often lead to conflicts and confrontations. Historically, Amarillo has also reflected broader patterns of racial and gender vulnerability, particularly for Black women. Social environments after dark often lack adequate security or oversight, leaving individuals exposed to potential violence. These dynamics would form the backdrop for the events that unfolded on the night of August 31st, 2024. On the night of August 31st, Felita joined family members to celebrate her cousin's birthday. She dressed for the occasion in a black and white outfit, preparing for a night that was intended to be lighthearted. With her group of friends and cousins, she set out to enjoy the evening in Amarillo. The group visited Mulligan's Sports Bar along Polk Street and later stopped at other nearby venues. These bars were crowded with people enjoying the holiday weekend. Within this atmosphere, Felita and her companions mingled, danced, and celebrated. At the same time, the mix of guests included unfamiliar individuals. Among them were uninvited attendees, such as Dylan Zane Black and other men who would later become central figures in the investigation. Subtle tensions arose during the evening as different groups of men exchanged words, setting the stage for conflict. As the bars closed, the gathering transitioned into an after-party on South Avondale Street. The environment inside the house was crowded and loud. People drank, played music, and continued socializing. As the party grew, it attracted individuals who had not been invited. Dylan Black and others arrived, intensifying the already tense atmosphere. Arguments began inside the residence, and a physical fight broke out between guests. Shortly after 3 a.m., the conflict escalated. At approximately 3:19 a.m., gunfire erupted inside the residence. Witnesses later described multiple shooters. In the chaos, Felita was struck in the back as she attempted to move away or leave the area. Another individual at the party was also shot but survived. The sound of gunfire caused panic as guests scattered, some fleeing into the street while others hid inside the home. Emergency services responded quickly to the scene following reports of shots fired. Ambulances arrived and transported both Felita and the second victim to a nearby hospital. Despite efforts by medical personnel, Felita was pronounced dead soon after her arrival. At the Avondale residence, police secured the location, collected evidence, and interviewed witnesses who remained. Officers noted the chaotic state of the scene, with overturned furniture, empty bottles, and shell casings scattered across the floor. Witness accounts varied, with some pointing to one shooter while others claimed multiple individuals fired weapons. News of Felita's death was delivered to her family, leaving them confront the reality of her sudden loss. Meanwhile, the Amarillo Police Department began piecing together the events of the night, identifying potential suspects, and preparing for what will become a complex investigation. In the early hours of August 31st, 2024, Amarillo police officers arrived on the 1300 block of South Avondale Street after receiving reports of multiple gunshots. 2 victims have been transported to a nearby hospital. One of them, 25-year-old Felita FeFe Jovan Bailey, did not survive. The scene left behind was chaotic, with discarded cups, broken glass, and shell casings scattered across the ground. The residence, which had hosted an after-hours gathering, became the focal point of an investigation that quickly expanded beyond the Amarillo Police Department. Police first canvassed the crime scene, interviewing individuals who had remained nearby and attempting to reconstruct the sequence of events. The primary objective was to establish the number of shooters, the direction of the gunfire, and the immediate motive behind the incident. Detectives collected shell casings, securing them for ballistic analysis to determine whether one or more firearms had been discharged. Surveillance footage from surrounding homes and businesses was also gathered. In several clips, multiple individuals were seen running from the area at the time shots were fired. Witness statements complicated the early investigation. Some attendees claimed to have seen a man pointing and firing a weapon inside the house before chaos erupted. Others described at least 2 different shooters, suggesting the possibility of crossfire. Several witnesses were inconsistent in their recollections, altering details about where they had been standing or which direction they saw gunfire. Alcohol consumption and the late-night environment added further uncertainty. Despite conflicting accounts, a name began to emerge repeatedly: Dylan Zane Black, a 22-year-old present at the gathering. Witnesses placed him near the center of the disturbance, and some alleged he had been seen brandishing a weapon shortly before gunfire erupted. On September 1st, 2024, just one day after Felita Bailey's death, Amarillo police arrested Dylan Black and charged him with her murder. The decision followed an accumulation of physical and digital evidence, along with initial witness testimony. According to investigators, surveillance video depicted Black holding a firearm during the incident. Additional leads pointed officers to clothing allegedly worn that night and a gun recovered at a location identified through a witness tip. During questioning, Black provided multiple accounts of the night's events. His statements shifted in detail, with inconsistencies regarding whether he possessed a weapon, whether he had fired it, and whether he had fled the scene immediately afterward. Detectives considered these inconsistencies significant, viewing them as possible signs of deception. The arrest was quickly publicized, and news reports framed it as a breakthrough. For Felita's grieving family and a community shocked by the sudden violence, the announcement brought temporary relief. Many believed the case was close to resolution, with a suspect in custody and evidence seemingly tying him to the crime. The appearance of progress proved short-lived. Within days of the arrest, the case against Dylan Black began to unravel. Forensic analysis and additional testimony raised questions that weakened the foundation of the murder charge. Some accounts indicated that Black may have been present with a firearm, but was not necessarily the person whose bullet struck Felita Bailey. Others suggested a second shooter had been involved, complicating the narrative of a single gunman responsible for the fatal shot. On September 6, 2024, officials announced the dismissal of murder charges against Black. Police confirmed that emerging evidence pointed to the presence of another shooter during the after-hours party. The statement introduced new uncertainty. If multiple shooters were involved, the ballistic evidence and conflicting accounts would need to be re-evaluated to establish who had fired the fatal round. The abrupt dismissal shifted public perception. The initial relief that followed Black's arrest gave way to renewed frustration. Community members questioned whether the wrong individual had been targeted in haste. Others speculated about whether Black had been framed, or if he had simply been one participant in a larger conflict that police had yet to untangle. Confidence in investigators diminished as clarity receded, leaving more questions than answers. With the case growing in complexity, the Amarillo Police Department broadened its approach. More than 70 officers were eventually assigned to the investigation. Over 60 search warrants were issued, covering residences, vehicles, and digital devices linked to potential suspects and witnesses. More than 50 individuals were interviewed, though many provided conflicting or incomplete statements, reflecting both fear of retaliation and confusion of the night in question. Given the escalating scope, federal agencies were brought in to assist. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, U.S. Marshal Service, and Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS, joined the effort, adding resources and specialized expertise in handling complex homicide cases. The involvement of multiple agencies signaled the seriousness of the investigation and the challenges faced in producing a definitive account of events. As investigators sifted through the growing body of evidence, attention shifted toward connections outside Amarillo. Witness testimonies began to highlight individuals who had traveled from Dallas to attend the party. These accounts placed another young man at the scene, described as having been in close proximity to Felita at the time shots were fired. Several witnesses, once reluctant, began to identify this individual as a key figure. The expanded probe sought to reconcile contradictions between ballistic findings, video evidence, and personal accounts. Analysts compared shell casings to determine whether more than one firearm had been used. Cell phone data was examined to map the movements of suspects before and after the incident. Surveillance videos from nearby intersections were cross-referenced with time stamps to track vehicles leaving the area. By the conclusion of this phase, the investigation had moved far beyond its initial focus on Dylan Black. Instead, it had become an inquiry into a broader web of interactions, with Dallas connections drawing increased scrutiny. The possibility of multiple shooters was no longer theoretical, it was central to the case. Police publicly acknowledged this reality, confirming what many in the community had speculated since the early days of the investigation. On March 15, 2025, nearly 7 months after the shooting that claimed the life of Felita FeFe Jovan Bailey, the investigation shifted when U.S. Marshals arrested 20-year-old Merron Bailey. According to law enforcement, Merron, who resided in Dallas, had been identified as a suspect during the months-long inquiry. He was taken into custody following a grand jury indictment that formally charged him with murder in connection to Felita's death. The arrest raised immediate questions. Merron was not a stranger to Felita. He was described as a relative, which introduced the possibility of internal conflict within the family circle. This revelation added complexity to the narrative, as early discussions of crime had focused on outside parties, including Dylan Zane Black, the man initially arrested but later released. Critics of the investigation pointed to the timeline. They argued that police may have delayed Merron's arrest despite possessing early evidence that linked him to the shooting. Reports indicated that Amarillo police had collected extensive witness statements, surveillance footage, and physical evidence in the days following the crime. Yet, Merron's indictment came only after months of extended investigation, which included over 70 officers, 60 search warrants, and 50 witness interviews. This timeline drew accusations of inefficiency and even intentional withholding of information. The community's reaction was marked by shock and suspicion turned inward. Initial expectations had been that the crime was a result of outside violence spilling into a gathering. The discovery that Felita's alleged killer was connected to her own family deepened a sense of betrayal among those closest to her. The narrative shifted from a case of random violence at an after-hours party to a far more personal and troubling story of familial ties intersecting with lethal conflict. Following Merron's arrest, Felita's family responded publicly. Her mother issued a statement, describing Felita as a sweet girl, friend to everybody, emphasizing her daughter's social nature and the broad network of people she had touched. This reinforced a contrast between Felita's character and the circumstances of her death. Her sister expressed disbelief, not only at the fact that Felita was gone, but at the idea that someone tied to the family could be implicated in her murder. This disbelief highlighted how the arrest fractured family trust and intensified grief by introducing questions of loyalty and betrayal. The family also faced financial burdens associated with funeral arrangements. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to cover expenses, with contributions coming from friends, co-workers, and members of the community. The campaign illustrated the extent of support Felita's family received from those who wanted to ensure she was remembered with dignity. Public tributes followed in various forms. Vigils and balloon releases were held in Amarillo and Dallas, providing spaces for mourners to gather. On social media, Felita's story spread widely under the hashtag #JusticeForFeFe. On platforms like TikTok and Instagram, users shared photos, memories, and calls for justice, amplifying the family's message and ensuring the case reached audiences beyond the immediate community. Media coverage initially centered on straightforward reporting from local Amarillo outlets. These news sources provided the public with basic facts about the shooting, the arrests, and the court process. Updates were often limited to law enforcement press releases and court documents. As the case developed, more critical and investigative voices emerged. A publication called The Barbed Wire produced a series of reports that challenged the official narrative. Their coverage raised questions about the Amarillo Police Department's transparency during the investigation. In particular, the barbed wire examined why Dylan Zane Black had been arrested so quickly, while Merron Bailey's indictment took months. Even though community rumors suggested his involvement early on, the publication also addressed systemic failures in the handling of the case. Its reporting placed Felita's death within the broader context of Amarillo's history of unsolved or mishandled cases involving Black women as victims of violence. This line of inquiry suggested that Felita's case was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern in which similar victims had not received timely or thorough investigative responses. Beyond local coverage, national interest grew as the case was amplified by social media. TikTok creators produced short documentary-style videos, some of which were shared widely, presenting timelines of events and speculating on unanswered questions. Podcasts also dedicated episodes to the case, highlighting the slow pace of the investigation and the unusual family connection between victim and suspect. These platforms increased the case's visibility, extending it far beyond Amarillo and into nationwide discussions of justice, community safety, and the treatment of marginalized victims. The investigation demonstrated clear gaps in transparency between law enforcement and the victim's family. Family members expressed frustration that they were not consistently informed about developments, and at times they learned critical updates through news outlets or social media, rather than directly from investigators. This lack of communication deepened mistrust and fueled suspicions of mismanagement. The case underscored long-standing concerns regarding how Black female victims are treated within Amarillo's criminal justice system. Community leaders noted that Felita's case was one of several in which Black women were victims of violent crime, but their cases appeared to receive delayed or inadequate responses. This pattern became part of public discussions following her death. The circumstances of the shooting also highlighted the risks of after-hours gatherings in Amarillo's nightlife scene. Police had previously been aware of similar unregulated gatherings where alcohol and firearms mixed in private settings. Critics argue that law enforcement failed to proactively address these environments, allowing violence to erupt unchecked. Felita's case became an example of how under-policing of such situations could lead to fatal outcomes. Finally, the case revealed the powerful role of social media in shaping public understanding of investigations. While platforms like TikTok and Instagram helped keep Felita's story in the spotlight, they also spread unverified claims. The tension between misinformation and fact created additional challenges for investigators, journalists, and the family, who had to continually clarify what was true versus what was speculation. The legal process following the shooting death of Felita of FeFe, Jovan Bailey, has been defined by complexity, multiple suspects, and shifting charges. The initial arrest of Dylan Zane Black, a 22-year-old Amarillo man, came within days of the incident. Black was accused after surveillance footage, and witness accounts placed him at the after-party with a firearm. Investigators recovered clothing and a gun believed to be connected to him, and court documents indicated he gave inconsistent statements during questioning. On September 1st, 2024, he was formally arrested and charged with murder. However, the case against Black did not hold. Within the same week, the charges were dismissed. Prosecutors stated that evidence had emerged pointing to the involvement of a second shooter. The district attorney's office explained that pursuing a case against Black at that stage would weaken the overall investigation, and the charges were dropped without prejudice, meaning they could be refiled if new evidence emerged. Despite the dismissal, Black remained under public scrutiny. Many continued to associate him with the incident, and his name circulated widely on social media as a presumed gunman. Attention shifted in March 2025 when U.S. Marshals, working with Amarillo Police and the Texas Department of Public Safety, arrested 20-year-old Merron Bailey in Dallas. He was indicted by a grand jury on a murder charge related to Felita's death. Unlike the quick dismissal of Black's case, Merron's indictment signaled a more substantial set of evidence reviewed by a panel of citizens under the guidance of prosecutors. This step indicated that investigators believed there was probable cause to proceed with a full trial. At this stage, legal observers noted several possible outcomes: a plea deal, in which Merron might agree to admit guilt to a lesser charge in exchange for a reduced sentence; a full trial, in which the state will present all evidence before a jury; or a mistrial or retrial, if complications arose during proceedings. Each option carried significant implications. A plea deal could end the case quickly, but leave lingering questions about the full truth. A trial would provide public testimony and evidence, but risk a hung jury if consensus could not be reached. The district attorney's office, responsible for managing the prosecution, faced scrutiny from a family and community over delays and limited public communication. The grand jury process itself raised questions. Grand jury proceedings are conducted in secret, with no defense attorneys present and jurors hearing only from prosecutors and selected witnesses. While this process ensures confidentiality, it also fosters skepticism in high-profile cases where families and the public demand transparency. Another issue anticipated in the upcoming trial was jury selection. High-profile cases in Amarillo often struggled to seat jurors without preconceived opinions due to extensive media coverage. The community's familiarity with both suspects, as well as the victim's prominence, increased the likelihood of bias. Defense attorneys would seek jurors skeptical of law enforcement evidence, while prosecutors would aim to seat jurors sympathetic to victims of violence. The length and rigor of voir dire, the questioning of potential jurors, was expected to be central in determining whether Merron Bailey's trial could proceed smoothly. The legal proceedings were far from concluded. While one suspect walked free from immediate charges, another awaited trial. For Felita's family, the delays and reversals meant the pursuit of justice remained ongoing and uncertain. In the months following the shooting, Felita's family consistently voiced frustration with the investigation and the legal process. They organized public rallies demanding accountability, holding signs, speaking to local media, and using social media campaigns to spread awareness of her case. Hashtags such as #JusticeForFeFe appeared across platforms, and TikTok videos recounting her story drew thousands of views. The family expressed their grief mixed with uncertainty as the case continued without a definitive resolution. With Dylan Black initially charged and then released, they questioned how the system could move so quickly to arrest but just as quickly abandon charges. The subsequent arrest of Merron Bailey months later brought some relief, but a long gap left them doubtful of whether law enforcement had acted with urgency. Family members spoke in interviews about experiencing too many delays and unclear answers. The secrecy of the grand jury process prevented them from knowing what evidence existed or how close investigators had been to charging Merron earlier. They argued that each postponement compounded their pain, making it difficult to grieve while still fighting for clarity and accountability. Despite these frustrations, the family worked to ensure that Felita's story remained visible. They emphasized the importance of remembering her life, not only the circumstances of her death. In speeches, interviews, and memorial events, they highlighted her education, her goals in dental hygiene, her supportive role in the family, and her energy as a daughter, sister, and friend. They wanted Felita remembered for who she was, not reduced to a victim of gun violence. This effort represented a broader push to honor her life, alongside the demand for justice. In doing so, the family kept pressure on the legal system, insisting that Felita's case not be sidelined or forgotten among Amarillo's ongoing caseload of violent crimes. The case of Felita FeFe, Jovan Bailey reveals a layered story of potential cut short, systemic challenges, and unanswered questions. At just 25 years old, Felita was pursuing a career in dental hygiene, employed at Tyson Foods, and building toward a stable future. Her goals were practical, tied to improving her life and providing for her family. The abrupt end of those ambitions underscores a loss not only to her loved ones, but to the community that knew her. Her family's experience has been marked by both grief and betrayal. Grief in losing a daughter, sister, and friend. Betrayal in witnessing how the legal system moved slowly and opaquely, leaving them with limited information about the progress of the case. The dismissal of charges against one suspect, followed months later by the indictment of another, only reinforced the sense that clarity was elusive. As of now, legal justice remains pending. With Merron Bailey awaiting trial and no final verdict issued, the truth of what happened on the night of August 31st, 2024, is not fully revealed. The details of who fired, why, and under what circumstances remain contested, left to be sorted out in court proceedings that may stretch months or years into the future. This story reflects larger lessons about how communities and institutions handle violence. It highlights the vulnerability of young women, especially black women, in social settings where safety can evaporate in moments. It exposes how systemic mistrust grows when law enforcement offers little transparency. It shows how families can be forced into dual roles, mourning their loved one while also becoming advocates for justice. Felita's case is both singular and symbolic. Singular in the sense that it is her personal story, with unique details and circumstances. Symbolic in the way it mirrors broader issues, violence in nightlife spaces, the slow churn of legal systems, the pressure placed on families to keep their loved one's memory alive. The closing thought is stark. One young woman, one night, and one bullet have left behind questions larger than any single family. Felita's story is not only about her death, but about the shadows it uncovers and how justice is sought, delayed, and sometimes denied. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.